Today, we're going to try and get inside people's heads.
Okay.
See how they tick. You know,
I like it.
with Walter Lippmann's Public Opinion.
Yeah.
We're going deep on this one.
Published 1922.
Wow.
Way
A
back.
while ago.
But still relevant.
Public opinion hasn't changed that much, you know?
You would think in over a century,
Yeah.
things would be different, but
The fundamentals are there.
yeah. I think it's really interesting that the material that you sent over
Oh, yeah.
really focuses on like the early 20th century perspective.
Yeah, it's fascinating how these ideas were already emerging back then.
Yeah.
The world was going through this huge transformation after World War I,
Yeah.
and Lippmann was really grappling with how individuals make sense of a world that's so much bigger than their own experiences.
Yeah. And it's funny because you think about now, the world is even bigger.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so much bigger.
We're more interconnected than ever.
So these questions of public opinion, how it's shaped and how it impacts us, I mean, they're even more relevant today.
And you know what really struck me? At the beginning of the book, Lippmann uses this image
Oh, yeah.
of an island community back in 1914.
Right.
They were getting newspaper reports weeks or even months late.
Oh, wow.
And they were reacting to these old reports as if they were current events.
It's like time stood still
Yeah.
and they're getting this warped view of the world.
Yeah, and it immediately highlights this gap between the world outside and
Yeah.
what Lippmann calls the pictures in our heads.
It's such a powerful image right from the start.
Yeah.
It really grabs you and makes you think about how much we actually know about the world.
Versus how much we think we know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how easily we can be swayed by incomplete or outdated information.
It's scary.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what makes Lippmann's work so important, I think.
Yeah. And for our deep dive today, I think our goal is to break down these core arguments that Lippmann makes and see which of these observations from a century ago still apply
Yeah.
to today's world.
Exactly.
Especially in a world that is just so saturated with information.
Right. We're drowning in it,
Yeah.
constantly bombarded
Yeah.
from every direction.
Let's start with this idea of the world outside versus the pictures in our heads.
Right.
What is Lippmann really trying to get at here?
Well, the core idea is that we don't and can't experience the entire world directly. We rely on these mental models, these pictures in our heads,
Yeah.
to understand the world around us.
It's like we're simplifying it.
Yeah, it's like filtering everything through our own lens.
Yeah.
And it's those representations, those pictures,
Yeah.
that we respond to and make judgments based on.
And it's interesting because he uses this analogy of Plato's allegory of the cave.
The cave.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah, it's a bit abstract.
Yeah, but basically it says that we're like these prisoners.
Yeah.
Chained in a cave. And we can only see shadows projected on the wall.
Yeah.
But we mistake those shadows for reality.
Yeah.
We think that's the real thing,
Yeah.
even though it's just a distorted reflection
Yeah.
of what's actually out there.
It's like watching the world through a filter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Lippmann brings this idea to life with some concrete examples,
Oh, yeah.
like the belief in a flat earth.
Yeah.
Back in the day, people genuinely believed,
Yeah.
based on their understanding of Scripture and what they could see,
Right.
that the world was flat.
Like Cosmos.
Cosmos.
Oh,
He
yeah.
envisioned the world as a flat parallelogram,
Yeah.
all detailed with scriptures,
Yeah.
backing up his view.
It's crazy to think about now.
It is.
But back then it was reality.
It was their reality,
Yeah.
shaped by the information they had access to.
Yeah, and then he gives another example from World War I.
Oh, right.
General Joffre.
Admiral Joffre. Yeah, it was like this huge figure.
Almost mythical.
Yeah.
Especially early in the war.
People saw him as this invincible leader,
Yeah.
this symbol of strength and determination.
Yeah.
But the reality on the battlefield
Yeah.
was much more complex and messy.
Yeah, it wasn't so black and white.
No.
Yeah.
It's a good example of how these pictures in our heads can be influenced by what we want to believe
Yeah.
as much as by the actual facts.
Yeah, we fill in the gaps with our own assumptions.
We do.
Yeah. And another point that Lippmann brings up is the difficulty of grasping large numbers
Oh, yeah.
or events that we can't see with our own eyes.
Right. It's hard to truly comprehend something
Yeah.
that's outside of our direct experience.
Like 3 million soldiers.
Exactly.
How do you even imagine that?
It's just a number,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really convey the scale,
The immensity of it.
the immense, the human cost.
Yeah.
It's beyond our grasp.
Yeah.
And that's where those mental shortcuts, those pictures, can really distort our understanding.
So we've got these pictures in our heads that might not even reflect reality. And then we get to Lippmann's discussion of censorship and privacy.
Okay.
How does controlling the flow of information affect these pictures?
Well, Lippmann argues that it's a primary way, that these pictures are shaped and molded.
Yeah.
He uses World War I as a key example.
Oh, yeah, the Battle of Verdun.
The Battle of Verdun, a long, brutal battle.
Yeah.
And the French high command, they knew that public opinion was crucial to the war effort.
Yeah, they had to keep morale up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they actively manipulated the news coming out of Verdun.
They kind of spun it.
They created what Lippmann calls a pseudo-environment.
A pseudo-environment.
Basically a constructed reality.
Yeah.
A carefully curated version of events.
Yeah, and they highlighted the successes.
Yeah.
Downplayed the losses.
Right.
And they really pushed this narrative of German attrition,
Yeah.
even if the full picture was much more complicated.
Much more nuanced
Yeah.
and potentially less favorable.
Yeah, so this military censorship wasn't just about keeping information from the enemy.
Right.
It was also about shaping public perception at home.
Exactly. Controlling the narrative
Right.
to maintain support for the war.
And Lippmann sees this military censorship as a major obstacle to true public understanding
Yeah, it prevents people from getting a clear and accurate picture.
of what's actually happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also raises this interesting point about how different societies define the line between private and public information.
Okay.
What's considered appropriate for open discussion varies widely across cultures and time periods.
Yeah.
And this distinction directly impacts the information that's available to shape public opinion.
So if certain topics are off limits,
Yeah.
the public's understanding of those areas will be limited.
Right. There'll be gaps in their knowledge.
Yeah.
Those gaps might be filled with rumors.
Speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of facts.
Exactly.
So we've talked about how information is controlled,
Yeah.
but even when it's not outright censored, Lippmann talks about the importance of contact and opportunity. So it's not enough for information to just exist.
No.
People need to be able to access it.
They need to have the opportunity to engage with it, to really internalize it.
Yeah, and he uses these massive propaganda efforts during World War I as an example.
Oh, yeah.
Like Mr. Creel's organization in the U.S.
Right.
They were trying to flood the public sphere with specific messages.
Speeches, posters,
That's a
newspaper
flash.
articles,
Everything.
all sorts of media. It was
Yeah.
a huge effort to shape public opinion.
Yeah. Millions and millions of pieces of propaganda.
Yeah, it was a massive undertaking.
But Lippmann also acknowledges that there are limits to how far those ideas can spread.
Yeah, even with all that effort.
Yeah.
He says there are distinct limits upon the circulation of ideas.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it comes down to access.
Access.
Not everyone has equal access to information,
Yeah.
social structures, economic inequalities,
Wow.
where people live. All of these things create barriers.
So different social groups and economic classes, they might have different levels of exposure to information and to different perspectives.
Exactly.
And this leads to what he calls radiant points of conventionality.
Oh, yeah.
What are those?
So these radiant points are like influential individuals or groups
Yeah.
whose views and opinions tend to spread to others.
Like trendsetters.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Okay.
So if a particular social circle or economic class has greater access to certain information, their beliefs can spread outwards.
And be adopted by others who might have less access.
Or less social influence.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, a kind of indirect influence on opinion formation.
It makes you think about who are those radiant points in your own life?
Yeah.
Who's shaping your views on things?
It's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now, Lippmann also dives into the limitations of time and attention.
Right.
Even back in the 1920s, he was already observing how difficult it is to stay truly informed about public affairs.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Even back then, research showed that people spent a limited amount of time actually reading newspapers.
Yeah.
And even then,
Yeah.
their interests varied widely.
Yeah. Some people cared about local news.
Right.
Others focused on politics or finance.
Yeah.
And there were even differences in what news interested men versus women.
Interesting. And this was long before the 24/7 news cycle
Oh, yeah.
and the internet.
Yeah.
So imagine now,
It's just an explosion.
the volume and speed of information today is exponentially greater.
It's overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah.
And Lippmann's point that any single person only has a small window of exposure
Mhm.
to information from their unseen environment.
Mm.
I think that's even more true today.
Yeah, we're constantly exposed to information, but how much are we actually absorbing and understanding? It's
Right.
like we're skimming the surface.
We're scrolling and scrolling,
Yeah.
but not necessarily digging deep
Right.
into any one thing.
Yeah. Then Lippmann talks about speed words and clearness.
Okay.
How do these factors affect the information we receive?
Well, this section really highlights the challenges of communicating complex realities
Yeah.
in a concise and easily understandable way.
Yeah, especially when speed is prioritized.
Right. Like, think about telegraphic news style.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
brevity was key.
Yeah.
You had to get the message across quickly.
Yeah.
But that often meant sacrificing context and nuance.
Yeah.
It's like trying to summarize a whole legal document.
In a headline,
Exactly.
you're going to lose a lot of the details.
Yeah, give us the nuances.
Yeah.
But beyond just speed, Lippmann emphasizes the inherent ambiguity of words themselves,
Oh, yeah.
even seemingly simple words.
Can have different meanings to different people.
Yeah, based on their background, their experiences, their culture.
Yeah.
So communicating effectively, especially across diverse audiences, is really challenging.
Yeah, it's like we're all speaking different languages.
In a way, we are.
Yeah.
We have our own personal dictionaries.
Yeah, and that brings us to one of Lippmann's most famous ideas.
Stereotypes.
Stereotype. Yeah.
What are they, and why are they so powerful?
So for Lippmann, stereotypes are basically those pictures in our heads,
Yeah.
but in a more standardized and oversimplified form. They're like preconceived notions,
Yeah.
shortcuts that we use to categorize and understand the world.
And we learn these stereotypes
Yeah.
from our culture, from our upbringing, from our social interactions.
Yeah, all of these things shape our perceptions.
Yeah.
And the problem is, these stereotypes often exist before we have any direct experience.
Yeah.
So they can really color how we interpret new information.
It's like we're seeing the world through tinted glasses.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Lippmann talks about this experiment with trained observers who watched a staged event.
Oh, right.
What happened there?
So even these trained observers, when asked to recount what they saw, they made significant errors.
Really?
Yeah, and they even added details that weren't actually there.
Wow.
Lippmann argues that their pre-existing stereotypes filled in the gaps and distorted their memories.
So our stereotypes actually affect what we see and remember. Yeah, they shape our perception of reality.
And Lippmann suggests that these stereotypes also serve as a kind of defense mechanism.
Right.
Why is that?
Because they provide a sense of order and predictability
Okay.
in a world that can feel chaotic and overwhelming.
Yeah.
They help us make quick judgments
Yeah.
and navigate social situations.
Okay.
But the downside is we can become resistant to information that contradicts our stereotypes.
We don't want to challenge our worldview.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It can feel threatening.
Yeah, he even uses the example of Aristotle
Right.
justifying slavery
Yeah.
to show how stereotypes can be used
Yeah,
to rationalize existing social hierarchies.
exactly.
Aristotle argued that some people,
We're just naturally suited to be slaves.
yeah, a stereotype
Yeah.
that obviously supported the status quo.
Yeah, and it shows how deeply ingrained and self-serving stereotypes can be.
And this reliance on stereotypes can lead to what Lippmann calls blind spots.
Yep, blind spots.
Yeah.
Where we just fail to notice or acknowledge information.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit with our preconceived notions.
Yeah, we block it out.
We filter it out.
Yeah.
And Lippmann uses the American stereotype of progress as an example of a national blind spot.
Okay.
This belief in continuous improvement can make it difficult to see and address societal problems.
Yeah, it's like we're blinded by optimism
In a way,
Yeah.
we focus on the positive.
and ignore the negative.
And he also introduces this concept of codes.
Codes.
Yeah.
What are those?
So codes are like the established frameworks of understanding,
Okay.
the shared assumptions and the conventional wisdom within a society.
Right.
And challenging those codes can make you an enemy.
Oh, yeah.
You become a threat to the established order.
They're like going against the grain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people don't always like that.
So how do we even detect these stereotypes that are so ingrained in us?
It's tough.
Yeah.
But Lippmann suggests looking for inconsistencies
Okay.
and contradictions in the information we encounter.
Right.
If claims about different groups or situations seem overly simplistic.
Or rely on generalizations.
Yeah.
That could be a sign that stereotypes are at play.
Right.
He gives that example of Ruritania,
Oh, yeah.
where conflicting claims about different parts of the country reveal these underlying national stereotypes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it shows how stereotypes can distort our understanding.
I have entire groups of people.
Right. And even the idea of classifying groups, like the working class,
Yeah.
It's fraught with difficulties
Yeah.
because those categories are often based on stereotypes
Yeah.
that don't capture the complexity of individual experiences.
And finally, Lippmann explores the role of interests in shaping public opinion.
Right.
It's not just about what we know,
No,
but also about what we care about,
it
what matters
matters
to us.
what motivates us.
Yeah.
And Lippmann argues that abstract information, no matter how factual,
Okay.
needs to be translated into something personally relevant to capture public interest.
Okay.
We need to be able to connect with it on an emotional level.
Yeah, and he talks about the power of narratives.
Yeah.
With clear heroes and villains.
Stories that we can get invested in.
Yeah.
We can identify with the characters
Yeah.
and feel those emotional states.
It's like we're drawn to stories that resonate with our values and desires.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he points out that public taste often favors narratives with a satisfying resolution,
Yeah, we want closure.
a sense of completion.
Yeah, a happy ending, ideally.
Yeah.
Or at least a sense that things have been resolved.
And he makes this really important point that self-interest isn't always straightforward
Oh, yeah.
or something we're even consciously aware of.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, our sense of self is shaped by so many factors.
Okay.
Our social roles, our economic circumstances, our personal histories,
Yeah.
all of these things influence what we perceive
Yeah.
as being in our own best interest.
Okay.
So it's not always a simple calculation.
Yeah.
It's much more complex and nuanced than that.
So to wrap up our deep dive into Lippmann's public opinion, we've seen how he identified these crucial dynamics
Yeah.
that shape public opinion, the gap between our direct experience and the wider world,
Okay.
the influence of controlled information,
Yeah.
the limitations of our own cognition,
Yeah.
and the pervasive impact of stereotypes.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
But it's so relevant to understanding how we see the world
Yeah, and how we form our opinions.
and how those opinions are shaped by forces
Yeah.
that we might not even be aware of.
And it's amazing how relevant these ideas are today.
Right.
In our digitally saturated world,
Right.
we have instant access to so much information.
But we're also bombarded by it
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
And media's everywhere.
Yeah.
Online communities form and solidify so quickly.
It's a constant stream of information and opinions.
It's hard to keep up
It is.
and even harder to filter it all.
So this leads to a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
In our current information landscape,
Sure.
with all its complexities and biases,
Yeah.
do you think the pictures in our heads might be even more detached from the world outside than they were in Lippmann's time?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, we have more access to information than ever before,
Yeah.
but we also have more ways to filter that information,
Yeah.
to customize our news feeds,
Yeah.
to surround ourselves with people who agree with us.
Yeah.
So it's possible that we're creating these echo chambers
Yeah.
where our existing beliefs are constantly reinforced
Yeah.
and we're less exposed to alternative perspectives.
It's like we're living in our own little bubbles.
In a way,
Yeah.
and that can be dangerous.
Yeah, it can make it harder to have those productive disagreements, to
Right.
challenge our own assumptions.
And to really understand the complexities of the world.
And what about censorship? Do you think it's taking on new forms today?
I think it's definitely evolving.
Yeah.
It's not just about governments blocking access to information anymore.
Yeah.
It's also about algorithms
Yeah.
curating what we see online.
Yeah.
And it's about the spread of misinformation
Yeah.
and propaganda through social media.
Yeah.
So the ways in which information is controlled and manipulated
Mm.
are becoming more subtle
Yeah.
and more pervasive.
It's like a new kind of information warfare.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something to be aware of.
Yeah, as we navigate this digital landscape.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking about Lippmann.
And we'll see you next time
You do then.
on the deep dive.
All right.
Bye.